In Cuba, the government announced an update of new migration policies to strengthen ties with the Cuban community living overseas. In Senegal, authorities report at least 3 people dead during protests supporting opposition leader Ousmane Sonko. And in central Somalia, devastating floods left over 200,000 families displaced in Beledweyne. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the Lasso studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Cuba, the Director General of the General Division of Consular Affairs and Cuban Residents Abroad of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ernesto Soberon, informed new migration measures that will take effect on July 1st. According to the official, new migration measures are part of the updating of the country's migratory policy in favor of family relations. Soberon clarified that the measures were taken according to the criteria of Cubans living abroad. Among the measures announced are the extension of the validity of the passport, the elimination of the extension of that document, and the equalization of the time of stay in the island for Cubans living abroad with that of their family members and foreign spouses and children during their stay in the country.
The measures in question are: Measure number 1, to extend the validity of the standard passport from 6 to 10 years for Cuban citizens 16 years of age or older, and to fix at 5 the validity for those under 16 years of age. To eliminate the requirement to extend the passports every 2 years and to decrease the cost of the paperwork associated with the passports at the consulates.
Director General of the General Division of Consular Affairs and Cuban Residents Abroad, Ernesto Soberon, also announced the new prices of passports for those over 16 years old and those under 16 years old.
As from the 1st of July of this year, July 1st, when the measures we are announcing today will come into force, the Cuban passport will be valid for 10 years for citizens over 16 and for 5 years for those under 16. It will not be required to extend the passport at any time, and it is established as a fee for the passport application, $180 or euros, depending on the currency in which the consulate in question works, in the case of passports for citizens over 16 years of age, and $140 or euros, depending on the currency in which the consulate in question works, for passports for citizens under 16 years of age.
In Ecuador, President Guillermo Lasso appeared before the National Assembly declaring his innocence and attacking his interpellants. The president began his speech by attacking the assembly members who are interpellants in the judicial process and accused them of having abandoned their role as legislators. He expressed that there is no evidence on the accusations against him for alleged embezzlement. Lasso referred that what happened with the Empresa Pública Flota Petrolera Ecuatoriana, FLOPEC, occurred between 2018 and 2020, 3 years before he became president of the Republic, and assured that on March 23, 2022, more than a year ago, he issued the entire file of FLOPEC and Amazonas tanker to the Attorney General's office. However, some deputies hold him responsible for the crime since he was aware of what was happening at the beginning of his term of office. Once the proceedings have concluded, which may take several days, another session will be convened to make a final decision based on the evidence of the charges and the defense as to whether or not to approve the removal of the president. In the case of reaching a sufficient amount of votes to remove him from office, the Vice President, Alfredo Borrero, should take over for the remaining time of the current term, that is, until 2025. Also in Ecuador, Assemblywoman Viviana Veloz, petitioner of the process that could lead to the removal of the president, stated during her speech that this political trial against the president, Guillermo Lasso, seeks to vindicate the people and save the country. The legislator from the Union for Hope Party presented before the rest of the parliamentarians the evidence that the chief executive always knew about corruption in public companies and did nothing to prevent it. The president will not be able to run away or hide behind his lawyers, said Veloz in the first day of the impeachment process, which could bring forward the end of Lasso's mandate. The Assemblywoman of the Social Christian Party, Esteban Torres, Another of the interpellants focused on his presentation on the legality of the procedure validated by the Constitutional Court without arbitrariness nor limitations to the defense. On Tuesday, the President of Brazil, Luis Ignacio da Silva, met with the President-elect of Paraguay, Santiago Peña, in the city of Brasilia to discuss bilateral alliances between the two countries. The meeting took place at the Planalto Palace within the framework of an official visit of the Paraguayan President to the South American country. Both leaders discussed the current challenges in the search for real integration in the region, as well as strategic issues for both countries, such as the revision of the Itaipu Treaty and the importance of Mercosur Treaty with the European Union. The Brazilian President expressed his congratulations to Peña for his victory in the elections of April 30th. This is the first meeting between the President-elect of Paraguay and the Brazilian President, and the first meeting between Peña and a President of the region. On Tuesday, Sam Altman, chief executive of ChatGPT's OpenAI, told U.S. lawmakers that regulating artificial intelligence was essential after his chatbot stunned the world. The lawmakers stressed their deepest fears of AI's developments, with a leading senator opening the hearing on Capitol Hill with a computer-made voice sounding remarkably similar to his own, reading a text generated by the bot. Altman testified before a U.S. Senate subcommittee and urged Congress to impose new rules on big tech, despite deep political divisions that for years have blocked legislation aimed at regulating the Internet. But governments worldwide are under pressure to move quickly after the release of ChatGPT, a bot that can churn out human-like content in an instant, went viral and both wowed and spooked users.
OpenAI was founded on the belief that artificial intelligence has the potential to improve nearly every aspect of our lives, but also that it creates serious risks we have to work together to manage. These companies, I think there are paths to the US setting some international standards that other countries would need to collaborate with and be part of that are actually workable, even though it sounds on its face like a impractical idea. And I think it would be great for the world.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Colombia, after an act of recognition and responsibility in the Department of Northern Santander and in the context of the hearings by former parliamentary commander Salvatore Mancuso before the Special Jurisdiction for Peace on the consequences left by paramilitary actions in this region and on the border between Colombia and Venezuela, the foreign ministers of these countries are finalizing protocols for the search of people buried in Venezuelan territory by paramilitaries. From Bogotá, our correspondent Hernan Tobar with the following report.
These ovens are located in a border zone with Venezuela in the Department of Northern Santander and are silent witnesses to the actions of paramilitary groups. In this place, an act of recognition and pardon was carried out by the former commander of the Catatumbo bloc, Salvatore Mancuso, responsible for crimes on the border. The Colombian government proposed to activate mechanisms to search for people buried in Venezuelan territory and informed that humanitarian activities are being agreed upon by the foreign ministries of both countries.
I believe that protocols must be established to effectively search that area and, of course, to do what is needed to find those bodies, and if they are found, bring them to Colombia.
This act takes place in the middle of the hearings that the former paramilitary chief Salvatore Mancuso is holding before the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, where he is supposed to contribute to the truth, not only regarding the paramilitary actions in Colombia, but also his relationship with civilians and military authorities that led to the murder of thousands of people during an armed conflict that left a deep trail of violence in the northern part of the country.
to create these incinerations, which I regret with deep embarrassment, to eliminate people in them and in Venezuela territory. There are more than 200 people that are missing today because of us, the United Self-Defense Forces in Venezuelan territory. I know this because I have been told by Jorge Iván Laverde and others that have been in acts of recognition and in contact with victims many times.
Jorge Iván Laverde, known as El Iguano, was the commander of the border front of the Catatumbo bloc, who terrorized this part of the country. Under his command, people were incinerated in the ovens of Huanfrío. He participated in the execution of at least 170 people, and he ordered and participated in at least 8 massacres between 1999 and 2004.
Catatumbo was a paramilitary scenario on May 29, 1999, as he indicated. The first massacre was in Petrolia, and that is how the terrifying massacre came about in the village of La Gabarra on August 22, 1999. That generated a great displacement, a great exile, great state neglect. Because I dare say that as the government has had abandoned us in Colombia, in the territories that by nature are rich but were declared vulnerable, the only things the government had to implement were the military and paramilitary forces. To besiege, tire, and board the peasants. And that was how they started with that peasant massacre.
While the victims of paramilitary actions asked Salvatore Mancuso to provide more details and names of the people involved in disappearances, murders, and massacres, social organizations demand to know the whole truth about the responsibility that sectors of the army, politics, and business have had in these events.
Hernán Darío Tobar Gaitán, teleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
On Tuesday, the Russian Defense Ministry said that the Russian military destroyed a U.S. Patriot air defense complex deployed in the Ukrainian capital Kiev. The complex was destroyed during a high-precision strike carried out on Tuesday night with the Kinzhal hypersonic missile system. The ministry also noted that Russian air defense systems over the past 24 hours intercepted 7 long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles of the Ukrainian armed forces. In addition, the Russian military managed to intercept 3 U.S. HARM anti-radar missiles and 7 HIMARS multiple rocket launchers projectiles. Over the past day, the Russian military has also destroyed a total of 22 Ukrainian UAVs in several areas of the Donetsk People's Republic, the Lugansk People's Republic, as well as in the provinces of Zaporizhia and Kherson. Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu said Kiev's statements about 6 Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missiles allegedly shot down by its air defense system on Tuesday are not true. The official added that the number of Kinzhal missiles allegedly intercepted by Ukraine exceeds 3 times the number of those launched by Russia. The Kinzhal hypersonic missile, with a range of 2,000 kilometers, reaches a speed 10 times faster than the speed of sound and can evade all existing missile shields. The state-of-the-art missile is designed to destroy aircraft carriers, destroyers, and other types of warships. The Council of Europe summit in Iceland approves the creation of a registry of damages aimed at forcing Russia to pay for damages caused to Ukraine. The idea is that Russia should be held accountable for what they call war crimes in Ukrainian territory. The Council's Secretary General Maria Spesinovich-Buric had earlier called for Ukraine to take center stage at the meeting and said it was vital that Moscow be held responsible for the death and destruction caused. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed those present by video link and received a pledge of more military supplies from Germany, France, and Britain. London and Paris, on the other hand, said they would also train Ukrainian fighter pilots. Just 1 year before Russia was expelled from the European Council, and since then there has been non-stopping of sanctions on the Eurasian nation. This way, and far from promoting a peace negotiation scenario, the West has continued its economic and political grip against Russia. In Germany, police forces suppressed pro-Palestinian protests in the city of Berlin. According to local media, the agents attacked the demonstrators with tear gas as they were commemorating the 75th anniversary of the first expulsion of some 750,000 Palestinians from their homes. Demonstrators also prevailed in the streets carrying the traditional Palestinian headscarves, the kufiyya, Palestinian flags, and posters recalling the sacrifice in the struggle for freedom. Although the commemorative events were held all over the world, the German government, for the second year in a row and under Israeli pressure, banned any event in remembrance of the ethnic cleansing and destruction of the Palestinian society in 1948. Farmers mobilized in Sri Lanka on Tuesday, a day after a herd of up to 50 elephants rampaged through crop fields. Enraged villagers stormed a remote government office in Sri Lanka on Tuesday, demanding actions as a consequence of the largest incident involving protected animals in recent times, according to local farmers. Elephants devoured nearly half their crops in 7 villages in the island's north. In Sri Lanka, elephants kill about 50 people a year, and farmers should electrocute or poison more than 250 elephants. Elephants are considered sacred in Buddhist majority Sri Lanka. Convictions for killing them can, in theory, lead to the death penalty, although prosecutions are rare. Chief Officer of Mahawilashishiya stated that wildlife authorities were planning an elephant drive next week to push the herd back to Wilpatu National Park. China's Defense Ministry spokesman Colonel Tang Keifi said that an increase in exchanges between the armed forces of Taipei and Washington is an extremely wrong and dangerous move. He also stated that the Chinese military continues to strengthen military training and preparations and will decisively suppress any form of Taiwan independence cessation, along with attempts at external interference, and will firmly defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Tang's comments were in response to a question about reports that U.S. President Joe Biden is prepared to approve a $500 million arms sale to Taiwan, as well as the dispatch of more than 100 military personnel to evaluate training methods. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461 and enjoy Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Senegal, at least 3 people died during protests supporting opposition leader Ousmane Sonko before he was supposed to attend a since-postponed rape trial in a court in Dakar on Tuesday. The Interior Ministry reported that 2 people were found dead in Dakar and Ziguinchor after the protests, and 1 police officer died when an armored police car accidentally hit him. On Monday night, buses were burned, shops were attacked, and people clashed with police in the capital and in Sonko's hometown during violent demonstrations. Sonko remained in Ziguinchor, where the unrest started when his supporters tried to protect him from a possible arrest to force him to be present in court. The politician denies the charges and said there was a plot to remove him from the presidential race. On Tuesday, the executive director of Education Cannot Wait, Jasmine Sharif, announced a first emergency response of $3 million to support the refugee situation in Chad's border regions with Sudan. The funding will provide access to safe and protective learning environments for incoming refugee children and support host communities. The new grant brings ECW's total investment in support of vulnerable children's education in Chad to more than $41 million. Since the conflict erupted in Sudan on April 15th, over 200,000 people have crossed the borders to the Central African Republic, Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia, and South Sudan to flee the violence. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees estimates that this number could reach 860,000 because of the escalating conflict. Funerals were held on Tuesday in Iraq for 78 people killed by the Islamic State group in 2014 and uncovering a mass grave in one of the terrorist group's worst atrocities. DNA testing was used to identify the remains of hundreds of people slain by the Islamic State after their discovery in 2017 at the gravesite on the outskirts of Mosul in the country's north. The extremists seized a large chunk of Iraq's territory and proclaimed a caliphate in 2014, carrying out abductions, beheadings, ethnic cleansing, mass killings, and rapes. In June that year, the Islamic State members attacked Badush prison and freed inmates before forcing around 600 mostly Shiite prisoners into a truck, driving them to a ravine and shooting them dead. 78 of them were laid to rest on Tuesday in Baghdad and in the Shiite holy city of Najaf in central Iraq. In central Somalia, devastating flooding has left over 200,000 families displaced in Beledweyne, the most densely populated city in the region. Spokesperson for the Somalia National Disaster Management Agency said at least 5 people, including 3 children, have been killed. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that more than 460,000 people had been affected nationwide. Rising water level forced a number of key facilities, including government offices and the town's main hospital, to close. Locals say this is the worst flood they have ever experienced due to the scale and the property damage caused. If the floods continue, people fear a cholera epidemic and malaria outbreak.
It was very difficult for me to walk this morning because of the amount of water. I used to be able to walk through it before, but as you can see, the river has reached my waistline and this situation is getting worse as the amount of water increases. And just the other night, it was reported that one of my neighbor's house was submerged by water. Having walked through this street a number of times today, yesterday and the day before, today was the worst, and every time the flood is increasing.
We have come to the end of this news briefing, and you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.